Welcome back to the Cruise Elite Podcast. What's up, Tony?
What's going on, Taylor? Happy December to you.
Yes, you as well. I've got a cough drop swishing around in my mouth.
Okay. You feeling better?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot better, but, just kind of lingering head cold kind of stuff. But, one of my best buddies not long ago warned me about, when our daughter started going to preschool.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, you're going to be sick like every 3 weeks. And I was like, yeah, we'll see about that. But it's been pretty accurate.
Yeah. Humbling, perhaps.
Yeah.
No, I've definitely heard that. It's a phase though, right? It happens for about a year and then it passes.
That's what they say. I hope so. Yeah.
I've heard though, if you have multiple kids, that it just kind of there's a feedback loop. Like one brings one home and then everyone gets it, and then the other one brings one home and then everyone gets it. So
right.
Well, someday you will have some applied neurology wisdom with immune systems, but until that day.
Yeah, for me right now, I've just been, just lightening my schedule and chilling out a little bit. And this morning I sat in front of the red light for a few minutes and just taking care of myself nutritionally and trying to get the best sleep I can,
Yeah, so you're not doing a HIIT workout when you're not feeling good?
No, but I need to get back into some training. I'm sort of feeling that. I'm getting antsy because I haven't worked out really since I felt the onset of these symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of excited too. I got the other day in the mail, I got my early Christmas present to myself, which is a 35-pound steel club. Oof. And to complete my set that I've been slowly building over 10 years, but I'm pretty minimalistic, when it comes to fitness equipment. Mm-hmm. It's fitness equipment for me is never a need. It's just a want. And so I've just been slowly building this set. And I've always needed that 35-pound club because I jumped from 20 to 45. And it's a huge gap. And the 45 is nasty. It's so hard to work with. And so now I filled that gap. So next workout for me, I'm going to be trying that thing out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this. When you are going to purchase a new piece of fitness equipment,
yeah,
do you have any rules for yourself? I'm not going to get this until I can do X, Y, and Z, or why were you holding off? I guess is kind of the question.
Yeah. So simply because I'm just really stingy about that, because I know that I could spend that money on something else that, I really am interested in. Fitness for me is just something I do at this point. I sometimes go back and forth in my head. I'm like, how much do I love this? There was a time in my life where I would have considered fitness my number one hobby. Mm-hmm. Right. And I was very passionate about it. That was more around the time when I was a competitive athlete. Mm-hmm. And now fitness is just something that I'm interested in it. I like exploring movement and I like becoming better at movement. But fitness for me is just something I sort of check off. I want to stay up with it as best I can, but it's because my goals have changed so drastically. It's hard for me to look at fitness equipment and go I absolutely need that, because I know I don't in order to achieve what I want.
Right.
You could put me in an empty room and be like, hey, work out. And I'd be like, all right, I got plenty I can do with my body.
Sure.
In this open room. So it's just, for me, it's always man, do I really need that? And then usually I talk myself out of it. But steel clubs is probably the tool that I enjoy the most. It really is my undisputed, probably my favorite training tool. Mm-hmm. So I caved and I was like, you know what? That gap in that set, they look so nice, in the corner, stacked up. It's a nice, I've got them going from light to heavy, and I've got that nice stack, that little staircase, and then there's that gap where it's missing, and I'm like, man, I'm filling that.
Yeah. It's collect them all in a way.
Yeah.
No, I can relate. I mean, I've got a set of kettlebells and whatnot, and there's always I have 2 of some, but not others,
Yep.
and then there's, like, some weights that there's a gap, and I'm like, do I need it?
Yep.
No, but it would
Yep.
be nice."
Oh, speaking of other equipment, because this is kind of an unusual year for me, because like I said, I generally don't buy much fitness equipment. I've just always had what I needed.
Mhm.
I did, and I think actually I mentioned this several months ago on the podcast, that at least I was searching for adjustable dumbbells.
Yeah,
And we did get some, and they actually have been wonderful to have. That was probably the best addition to our gym for both my wife and I that we've ever purchased. So
that's awesome.
yeah, so those have been great.
Yeah, someday we're gonna do an episode about the home gym and just
Yeah,
talk about all the gear and
yeah, that'd be
how you're
cool.
using it. Very nice, very nice. Well, very appropriate for the holiday season, you know? It's
Yeah,
like treat yourself to a
yeah,
Christmas present.
yeah. Another whoops. I feel like I've been pressing buy a lot lately.
Yeah, yeah. I go through phases, where it's like the impulse control maybe isn't as good as it could be.
Same here.
But this is the time of year where they're going for it. The marketing is strong, the
Yep,
deals are strong.
it's
Like
true.
Black Friday is always hard to ignore.
I know.
Um, but this is also the time of year where people might and maybe it'll take a week or two, but people will start thinking about their goals
Yes.
for the next year. And I was really curious about how you think about goal setting in your training, but also in your practice.
Hmm.
And, also to talk about it generally, but also to zoom in specifically about goal setting and pain.
Hmm.
Because let me give you a scenario that
Yeah.
I've encountered so many times, especially as I'm getting older. Someone really wants to get into shape. They set a goal. Maybe it's to run X amount or to deadlift this much, or sometimes it's even more vague. I'm just going to be in the best shape of my life this year. I hear that
Right.
all the time. And then 3 months in, 4 months in, they tweak their shoulder, their back, their ankle. Sometimes it's a more severe injury, and all the goals just go out the window.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, that's it. And so kind of with that framing, I'm just curious how you're thinking about goals and then what to do when pain gets in the way.
Yeah. It's a great question because man, pain can really sideline your efforts around goals. I've experienced that several times. So pain with goal setting is interesting. There's a couple of traps actually, because you would think, okay, I should set a goal by this date. I want to be out of pain.
Mm,
And it's kind of, I relate this topic a lot to, it kind of parallels weight loss
hmm,
in a sense. And I'll explain why. Because with weight loss, it's generally a bad idea to say, okay, by July 1st, I want to weigh whatever. Okay. And it's good to set goals, but when you create sort of rigid goal setting for yourself, like with weight loss, it's generally not good. It changes the way that you approach, the whole process.
hmm,
And then if you get to that date and you haven't achieved your goal, like what does that mean for you? Or what about the pressure building as you are getting closer to that date and you're kind of doing the math and watching the trend and you're like, well, I don't really think I'm on track. What is that going to encourage you to do that might not be in your best interest? Whether that's quit or do something more extreme to try to reach the goal. Setting goals around pain is very similar to that. In fact, I usually encourage people not to set a rigid goal for themselves. Like, I want to be out of pain by this date, because pain itself, especially chronic pain, we're talking about pain that, has existed for, quite some time, 3 months, 6 months or more, sometimes years. That's what we're kind of considering chronic pain. No tissue damage, necessarily to go with it, but you have pain and it's become kind of mysterious, if you know what I mean. Pain is more like an emotion, which makes it interesting to think about. Because if I say I want to be out of pain by this date, that's the same as saying I want to make sure that I'm not as sad anymore.
Mm.
I want to make sure that I'm not as depressed anymore, right? And emotions come and go based on so many factors. Some of them we understand, some of them we don't. Sometimes we're in a new emotional state, we're not sure why. Other times we know exactly why. Oftentimes the emotional state is very short-lived, it's gone. It's all over the place, right? Because it's an emotion, and emotions come and they go. Pain is like that too. It's more like an emotion than anything else. And the process of trying to get out of pain is not linear. Going back to being similar to like weight loss. Weight loss is not linear. If your weight loss looks linear, you're actually making some very big mistakes, right? And you may not understand what the process should look like with the fluctuation in your body weight until eventually you see a trend happening that's leading you in the right direction. That's ultimately how we would want to look at improvements with pain, is we would want to track more of the trend than say, I want to be out of pain by this date, if that makes sense. And I think there's lots of reasons why. If I say I want to be out of pain by January 1st so I can start my deadlift routine again, it's when we set goals like that, sometimes they work against us because they just prompt us to make poor decisions. Or it works against us in the sense that we get upset that we might not be on track and then we stop altogether.
Right.
It's typical of kind of human behavior, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. So you're discussing, the idea of setting a goal about pain.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's like, okay, I had this ankle injury and it's mostly healed, but now I have ankle pain and it flares up and this, that. And so by the end of this year, I want to be pain free in my ankle.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what you're getting at here.
Yeah, you just have to be careful of how rigid you are with, I want to be out of pain by that exact point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Because things are going to fluctuate a lot. It's more important for the individual to understand the process and not focus so much on what, that date that they want to be out of pain.
Yeah.
And when you educate somebody on the process, again, similar to weight loss, the average person, that has failed at weight loss over and over again doesn't know that today they might weigh X amount of pounds, and then they might weigh themselves tomorrow and be 1 to 2.5, sometimes 3 pounds heavier than they were today.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't understand, if they don't have the education and understand that that is actually a totally normal response from your body as it's dealing with fluids, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
if they don't know that, it causes them to get off track, to quit, or to make drastic, poor decisions that then don't help in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about that I make that comparison a lot in my mind. It's very similar. So with pain, it's actually more important to know what should the process look like? How is it going to fluctuate? What can I expect? And then similar to weight loss, looking at a trend, right? Because it doesn't just happen for most people. It doesn't just happen in this kind of magical way where it's like, all right, I have ankle pain. And now all of a sudden, because I did my routines, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
It just very rarely do you have this kind of magical thing happen where it's like, boom, no more ankle pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of this trend. And especially with chronic pain, this is super important for coaches and practitioners to hear, because as we're guiding our clients through this, you have to educate them at what the process looks like and get them to understand the trend in their behaviors and sort of mark progress by seeing changes in behavior that represent having a different pain experience.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're doing more of something And those little progress markers are going to be small, and so you're looking to find all of those things, and then that tells you, okay, I'm trending in the right direction.
Hmm.
And of course, you want to experience less pain, but as I said, it's not linear, and you have to stay consistent and stick with it to get to a point where you're starting to notice that trend. And I'll tell you what, for people in chronic pain, that's a very difficult thing to do.
Hmm.
Part of the reason is because when we've been in chronic pain for a long time, it really messes up our cognition. And what I mean by that is our executive function. So, and there's reasons, why that can happen. It's kind of brain fog, if you want to think about it that way. But when your executive function gets compromised because you've been in pain for a long time, it becomes really hard to make good decisions for yourself. So it's a trap.
Hmm.
It's why people get trapped in a chronic pain cycle, is because of that. Eventually, your cognitive function suffers from it.
So I think most people who have experienced any kind of pain have a goal, whether they've stated it or not, to
Yes,
get out of pain.
yes, but let me say this, because this is kind of the difference between the person who sprained their ankle or has some kind of, I wouldn't like non-serious, if you will, pain going on because of maybe an injury event. The difference between that kind of pain and somebody who actually is experiencing long-term chronic pain,
Hmm.
these are two very different presentations and two very different kinds of people. Think about this. When you sprain your ankle and you're out for, I don't know, 4 weeks, 6 weeks from doing something that you like to do, you're pissed off, right? You're frustrated. That's generally the type of emotion that goes with an injury like that. Okay. Insert any injury into that you want, for the most part, wrist injury, ankle injury, knee injury, whatever, those types of things. You get frustrated. It's like you're being held back. You can do some things, but you're being held back. And that's kind of the feelings it brings up. When you have chronic long-term pain, because that is so suffocating for your entire brain and nervous system, it's completely different on an emotional level. It makes people emotional. It much, and it's beyond than just being frustrated. There's a lot of emotions that come with that. A lot of depression, a lot of apathy. It's very different, you know. So we got to point that out,
Hmm.
because in this conversation, the person with the ankle sprain is probably able to look at a calendar and go, it's pretty reasonable. I'm going to be able to go back to jujitsu on that date because, well, I know I sprained my ankle. It was an injury event. And I know that after this amount of time, the tissue damage is likely going to be pretty healed. And if I do my part along the way, there's a good chance I'm going to be pretty solid at that point in time. A person in chronic pain can't do that.
Mm.
It just is completely different.
Yeah. So time-based goals in these scenarios can be counterproductive.
They can. Yeah.
I want to get back to this because I think adding pain and especially chronic pain on top of anything just makes it more complicated.
Hmm.
And there's a lot to talk about there. But if we were to zoom out a little bit and just talk about goal setting itself,
Yeah.
how do you feel about time-based goals for something like performance? You mentioned like weight loss, but like what about, I want to hit this deadlift in 6 months. Like is that something that you use or find useful, or are you generally against kind of a time-based goal?
Yeah. So this has changed for me personally over the years, kind of through my evolution with fitness. I used to set those goals. In fact, it's funny, man. I I think back to being like literally 15 years old in my basement with my
Hmm.
first bench press. And I had a whiteboard on my wall, and I created like a goal setting. Like this was just sort of, I don't even know where I got this idea.
Hmm.
It was just intuitive at the time because I was so interested in getting stronger. But I had a whiteboard on my wall, and it had dates on it. And some of those dates were like my birthday, because I remember one of my goals was I wanted to bench press, a certain amount of weight before I was 16. And so I literally was like keeping track of that in some way
Mm-hmm.
back then because it was super important to me back when I was more about, chasing the weight on the bar. It's just kind of a phase. And so back then and after, I liked keeping track of goals like that. And of course it's nice to accomplish them, right? And it keeps you, it also helps keep you on track. For where I am now in my life, fitness goals mean absolutely squat.
Hmm.
Like it just has zero meaning to me. I want to be reasonably fit,
Mm-hmm.
you know? That would change if all of a sudden I became, if I decided, okay, I've never competed in jujitsu before or something, and now I want to start doing that and pursuing it. And that would definitely change the way I look at this, I think.
Yeah.
Um, I think I would be thinking about certain things that I could use for goal setting with performance. It probably would not be weight on the bar because I'm just past that,
Mm-hmm.
right? That I already learned that lesson over many years that weight on the bar does not necessarily transfer to athletic performance. I actually remember somebody said to me long ago, there is no podium in the weight room.
Hmm.
This is when I was an athlete. And it kind of was a full stop for me because had always been so invested in, I'm going to get that deadlift up to that weight. And I sort of started learning the hard way through wrestling by getting beat by guys who did not look as physically impressive as me
Hmm.
and who did not in who weren't like in a weight room.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was the stronger person hands down, but that didn't necessarily mean that I was going to win these wrestling matches.
Interesting.
And so somebody said to me, there's no podium in the weight room. And that really stuck with me. I was like, man, like, what am I doing? Investing all this time and energy and effort into thinking that weight on the bar means something for my athletic potential. It was more about just being dedicated to the process. And that changed my thinking. And it still took years,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of mature through that. But because my life is, different now in my 40s as a dad, I just want to be reasonably fit. I want to be able to do the things I want to do with my body. And it doesn't really require goal setting. What it requires, if I were to set any kind of goal, is consistency.
Mm-hmm.
I need to explore fitness enough that it actually means something, for my physiology, right? And yeah, so it's going to be based on the person, and it's going to be based on where you are in your life. I think competitive athletes probably would be a bit more drawn to that kind of thing, which is great, can help you in a lot of ways. But yeah, I don't see myself setting a goal of, you know, 15 pull-ups, by my birthday, April 7th,
Sure.
you know?
Sure. So, as a coach, you might be working with people that have goals, whether
hmm
it's because they're just fitness enthusiasts or because they are actually going to compete
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
Is it safe to say that for you, like that goal is theirs and they can work towards that, but your sort of contribution to their practice is going to be not so goal based in that way?
Yes. And yes, I'm never going to take that away from the athlete.
Hmm.
If they have a specific goal, I do want to use that in the work that we're doing. I think, it's definitely is helpful. And sometimes I work with an athlete and they have specific like physical requirements that they want to meet if they have some kind of testing.
Mhm.
And that's fine. That can kind of make stuff fun too. But I think what I end up doing in the long run is I still educate them that, the physical testing is there because they think it needs to be. What you're going to learn is that your teammates who are not doing as well in the physical testing might actually be the teammates that are on the podium on Saturdays,
Mhm.
which is always an interesting lesson to learn too. So I don't take, I don't want to take that away from an athlete, but for me as the coach, I am always trying to educate and push people towards movement quality goals. Like just becoming better at movement. And that's actually hard for me because sometimes I'm working with people and they don't know what that would look like or even feel like. It's like, how do I know that movement quality has improved? And so part of that is educational. I might be working with, an athlete and teaching them maybe more ideal mechanics for simple things like lunging and squatting and, different dynamic type movements, right? Things that, might resemble or exercises that might resemble more gait process type things, moving our bodies like humans are supposed to contralaterally, with kind of this reciprocated movement that looks like walking or running. I like to look at movement quality like that
Mhm.
and analyze it and see, can we teach you how to move better? And to me, that's the ultimate. But it's a process as far as coaching goes because your trainee doesn't necessarily know what that looks like or feels like yet. So you have to bridge them into that as you move through that process.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems like it's kind of a nonlinear process too for that,
Totally.
like, rank beginner, because they also have to get stronger in certain ways to be able to move better,
Yes.
and they have to move better so that they can then get even stronger, and it's like chicken and the egg in some ways.
It absolutely. And then the coolest thing is working with somebody who then, and this kind of ties into what we were discussing with pain too. Because remember I said you want to track behaviors, when you're trying to get yourself out of pain, it's more important to track those behaviors and the trend over time. With movement quality, it's kind of the same. And the coolest thing, whether it's about movement quality or it's about experiencing less pain, the coolest thing is when your client comes back to you and they're like, I noticed this thing in my real life, like outside of the gym context. Because in a gym environment, everything is so controlled and organized, which to me is just, it's just back and forth in my mind. Like, how much of this really translates to real life? Some of it does, some of it doesn't. Everything's so organized and controlled. When we get out into real life, everything's so reflexive and reactive. You don't get to choose how to step.
Hmm.
You don't get to choose how to put your foot, down all the time and how to carry your weight. And so it's like this back and forth in my head. It probably always will be. And with when you're looking at movement quality and your client says, I noticed that over the weekend, this seems better. It seems more efficient. I did it and previously I wouldn't have done it because I knew I shouldn't because of my pain. But I made the decision to do it without even thinking about it and I was successful with it. And when people start having those types of realizations in their life, I love that. That's really exciting as the coach, whether we're talking about improving one's quality of movement or pain.
Hmm.
It's great when those things show up in your life. It's like the ultimate, right? It's really the ultimate carryover.
Yeah. So, without setting a goal around pain, if someone is dealing with chronic pain, but they have performance goals, does that pain consideration or pain management like factor into how you would help them achieve those performance goals? Or is
Yeah.
it kind of like a separate track? Like we're always managing pain and then your performance goal is kind of this parallel track that you're doing alongside, or is there some interplay?
Okay, so to me, you have to blend them, and if you don't, it's a mistake.
Hmm.
Okay, especially if you're working with somebody who truly has a performance goal, they're probably a pretty athletic minded person. Maybe they are an athlete. The more that you can blend these two things together and make one process out of it, the better. The reason for that is because with decreasing pain, we're trying to decrease threat. We're trying to create plasticity essentially by breaking up old neuronal connections that represent your pain. In the literature, some people refer to literal neuronal connections that represent your pain as pain signatures.
Hmm.
And so when you've been in chronic pain for a long time, you actually have pain signatures that represent your pain. And our job when we're trying to get out of chronic pain is to make those connections weaker. So, one of the factors that goes into this, and the word I think is salience, I
Hmm.
guess. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. I think that's the word. Like it, how important is it to you?
Yeah.
You know, like because if it's not important to your brain, it's very hard to keep somebody on a process. And that's I think what goal setting ultimately is doing for people is
Hmm.
creating that salience where it's relevant, it's important enough that you're kind of staying with it. With pain, you have to have that. And this is I'm sort of taking this into a different I'm getting off track from your question, but I want to say this before I forget because it's so important. With chronic pain individuals, one of the most important things is this idea of salience. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see chronic pain people making, or kind of the trap that they fall into, is that they never think about, or nobody ever asks them, what do you actually want to do with your body when you achieve your goal? Chronic pain has this weird effect on us
Hmm.
where it's hard to explain, but it can almost keep you present centered in the wrong way.
Hmm.
As weird as that sounds, you're just kind of hyper fixated on it moment by
On the
moment
pain.
on the pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're hyper fixated on yourself and things that you normally wouldn't be thinking about. And it's really intense. It's very energy expensive, especially if you're really in a lot of pain. The problem that people get into is that like when they work with coaches and therapists, practitioners who are trying to help them, if the coach does not ask them like what is their why and what do you intend to do with your body differently when eventually you achieve this goal, the chronic pain cycle continues. It's like a vortex. And most people who have been in chronic pain, especially the ones who have been in chronic pain for years, have stopped thinking past their chronic pain. And so it becomes more of a checking the boxes and going to all these different professionals that say that they can help. And the process becomes more about that. And they don't look beyond that. Like, what would you actually do differently? Would you get on the floor with your grandkids and play and roll around and pick them up without any kind of fear? Instead, it's like too much emphasis on what you're doing in the moment, even with the therapeutic intervention, not enough emphasis on what is it going to be like when you have less pain? How are you going to move through the world differently? And this is crucial. I've asked clients in the past, and this literally blindsides them, it seems like, what are you going to do when you're not in pain anymore? Well, they're like, what do you mean? Like, it's like a full stop, sort of like very scary question.
Hmm.
Nobody has ever answered it right away, ever. And it's like, well, we need to talk about this. because it just becomes this getting out of pain for them just becomes this ongoing conversation. I got to go to my appointments. I got to get rid of this pain.
Yeah.
Guess what? The more you focus on pain, the better you get at being in pain. It circles back to those neural signatures. It's kind of a beast like that. You are strengthening neuronal connections that represent your pain when you bounce around to all these different practitioners and they don't meet your expectation or the results don't meet your expectation. You are strengthening those neural signatures, which is scary because it really locks people in. So that's a super important thing for people to hear because, the best way to stay in pain is to try a lot of things that don't get you the result you want because you're sort of validating your brain's response to the pain because it's protective in nature. Your nervous system and your brain is just trying to protect you. It's a protective output. I think about this a lot. Your brain is wired for survival. It's not wired for performance and fun, right? It's wired for survival and negativity, and that's to keep you safe. So we got to be thinking about these things and having conversations out loud with people. Like, what am I going to do? Instead of saying I'm going to be out of pain by, August, it's more, well, what am I going to do with my body differently when I achieve a certain result? How is that going to change my lifestyle?
And so in that way, could a performance goal sort of be like an external factor that can take the mind and focus it elsewhere? Because I guess it really depends on how the pain presents itself, right? But I could imagine a scenario where if I'm doing something physical, at some point I might stop thinking about that throbbing pain or that, it's this happens to me with running, right? Where it's like my knee's angry at me and my knee flares up.
Yep.
And then if I kind of keep going and don't focus on it and listen to my headphones and a few minutes will pass and I forget that I was thinking about my pain.
Yes, exactly. So great. You circled me back. You're the man. Because I really wanted to say that part. And this was where initially we started, where I was talking about making it feel important to your brain and blending the two things together to make one process. One of the best ways to help people get out of a pain situation is to incorporate stuff into that process that they love to do. And sometimes that's the thing that really moves the needle the most. So let's say you're working with somebody who's athletic and they're a tennis player and they've got knee pain and the knee pain is preventing them from playing tennis. Well, if you include a tennis racket in their training, I guarantee they will feel less pain. And you can literally get creative like that. So how you incorporate it is a whole different conversation in itself. But for me, I might literally be creating kind of reaction-based games that use the visual system, that use the vestibular system, that use proprioception. And yes, we're not trying to push the envelope and cause pain. We're setting up a drill that allows the person to think and move like the athlete that they are without the knee being a concern, and they get to go through the process and make it about tennis. It's huge. I mean, huge. I think back a lot of years ago, somebody told me, like, I've got horrible shoulder pain and I can't basically do anything. And then I went out in the backyard and I was playing catch. I think he said he was playing catch with a relative with a football. He had right shoulder pain. He was trying to throw the football lefty. He just got frustrated and he's like, can we just throw this thing with my right arm? He didn't really think anything of it and he threw it and he's like, I had no shoulder pain. And stuff like that is very real. It's very real. So I worked with a high level fencer, maybe 7 years ago. And so she had significant hip pain. And one of the things she told me just in conversation is when she puts her shoes on, her fencing shoes, the pain goes away. So, and I'm thinking about that. And that is very typical of athletes because they have very interesting and very skilled interoception, especially the high level ones. So every time she put her shoes on, if they were fencing shoes, her hip pain was gone. And she was able to go and coach. At this point, she was a coach. And she was able to go and coach and work with her athletes. But when she didn't have those shoes on, things were much different for her. It's very interesting to think about. So taking things that people love, activities, movements that they're very comfortable with, that give them joy, and blending that into the process can actually be an amazing tool for decreasing pain.
Fascinating. So early in the conversation, we talked about the perils of setting a goal about pain, specifically like a calendar-based goal. Like by July, my shoulder's going to be pain-free.
Right.
But you did mention sometimes consistency might be a worthwhile measure and therefore a worthwhile goal to achieve in the pursuit of some of these other pain or performance goals. So I guess my question is, how would you structure that? Or how would you think about a consistency based goal? And just to add a little bit of context, in previous episodes, we talked a couple of times about the idea of creating a practice as opposed to kind of like a program.
Yeah. Boy, that's a very hard thing to do as a coach.
Yeah.
With exercise, because it's been so drilled into them to treat it like a program and like a checklist. People actually are bothered by that a lot of times when they start to learn that I'm more freestyle. I'm not rigid with this stuff. I don't even count repetitions. Okay. So what kind of personal, what kind of personal trainer am I? The stereotypical personal trainer's you got one more, 6, 7, right? I don't even count. Right. So my clients are they're turn around. They're keep going. And I'm yeah, keep going. It looks good. It looks quality. Right.
So you're waiting for the form to change.
A lot of times. Yeah. A lot of times. Now I'm doing that. There's more context we could add. I'm not doing that with a big heavy deadlift, and
right.
We do know what our rep range is typically going to be, but with movement in things that are not as rigid as traditional strength training, it'd be funny to hear from my clients on this, but literally they're one more, should I keep going? I'm yeah, keep going. This looks good. You're holding it together. Everything's smooth. And then sometimes I'm stop. And they're how come? I'm well, you're falling apart a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's get a little recovery. Let's do a high payoff drill. So I'm really freestyle with it. And that's just where I've gone with my coaching. It's more I'm coaching athletics than it is I'm coaching fitness. I'm coaching skill. That's just, it's gone to a place where it's more skill and style than it is rigid fitness, So, what does it look like? That's how it is when a person's working with me. But when I send them home to do stuff on their own, I do encourage them to make it more of a practice than anything. And I basically just say, if you have lousy repetitions, repeat it and see if you can nail it. And I try to get them into that mindset, because I definitely don't want them, documenting poor repetitions, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to know when it was low quality and that they probably could do something to change that. And to me, that is a big part of making it a practice versus, more traditional style fitness where something is governed by a clock or something like that, and you're just trying to get as many repetitions as you can. Your form kind of goes out the window. I really don't like that at all. So I encourage them to make things more of a practice, repeat repetitions when they can identify that it was low quality. But with certain people, you can't leave them in a place where they don't have the structure,
Mm-hmm.
because certain personality types they are not going to do well with that.
Mm-hmm.
So it does come down to that too. But usually the people that really like the structure are the ones I'm kind of yelling at, being like, you've got to be less rigid. And when you don't perform well, redo it, get it right. And I don't have to worry about that person so much with consistency,
Right.
because the person who likes structure generally is the person who's going to be better at being consistent.
Or might be
Because
overly consistent,
maybe,
right? They might
potentially.
they might be working out or pushing themselves because the program says so,
Yeah.
but when their body says no, right?
Yep, exactly. And so the other type of person that likes my freestyle approach, that wants to become very playful with the practice, we're not really counting reps, we're just moving. We have to be really careful with that person. And I've made this mistake in my career before. If you send them on a exploration,
Mm-hmm.
we don't know where they're going to land
Mm.
with their practice. I was working with one professional athlete who really liked that style. And it's typical of a lot of types of athletes to kind of like that, because make it all about quality,
Mm-hmm.
like, make it all about skill. And I didn't really pick up on how strong just how much she loved movement as an exploration and not as counting reps. And so I was like, oh, it's going to be awesome working with this person. And all of a sudden, like, her gym practice, she's like, yeah, it's taking me like 4 hours to get through my training. And I'm like, what? What
Yeah.
is going on? And that ended up ultimately being a problem that I created by, kind of giving her permission to explore movement so much that it really slowed down what she was doing. And she kept going and going and going. And before you know it, she's lost track of time, which is something that can even happen to me if I'm exercising, and I don't have to be so rigid on the amount of time, so a lot of this, can be based on personalities.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have any like rule of thumb, maybe advice for like if someone's generally very structured and consistent, how you would like approach a goal around that and vice versa?
Yeah, man, it's so simple for me. Like, thinking about my clients and doing their homework drills and stuff, I just want them to hit the routine. And I put a different number on this for different people. But for example, one of my clients right now, she's not an athlete. She's more just trying to improve movement quality and dealing with some pain issues. And together, the two of us decided what was reasonable for her for consistency.
Mhm.
And she's doing like 2 days a week at a local gym with kind of a small group environment, fitness thing that she likes to do. And she'll do that 2 days a week, and then she'll do our strength dojo once a week. So there we have 3 days a week. Great. I think that's good for this person. Then what we did is we added some micro dosing, if you want
Mhm.
to call it like that, which is, we have these like 3 or 4 high payoff drills for her that we want her practicing. And we're trying to get those little micro sessions in at least 3 times in a week,
Mhm.
wherever they fall,
Mhm.
based on her schedule and stuff and what she can do. And so this is just a conversation that I have with clients, and based on what is achievable. And one of the things I will say to people when they tell me, when we have this conversation, they'll like, actually just recently had this conversation with this individual because she was wanting my opinion about how many days a week she should do with the group environment with the fitness. I sort of feel them out. And then as the coach, I try to get them to tell me what they think they can achieve, right? Almost like you're getting them to argue for themselves,
Mhm.
right? Rather than me saying, I think you should do this 5 days a week. I really want to know what they think they can do. I want to get them to argue for themselves and tell me what they think they can achieve. And then I always say, do you think you can achieve this? Like, I really want those little micro sessions getting done because those are the things we've tested,
Right.
right? That's not general fitness. That's what we've tested. That's what I know your nervous system needs right now. I want to make sure you can get those in. Can you get that in on your worst day? Like,
Ooh, that's a good
is
question.
that achievable on your worst day? And sometimes they don't know, right? And we can try it out. Like, big deal if you don't, if you're not as consistent as you wanted to be, you're trying, you're figuring out what is reasonable, what is realistic. But when we dial this in so that the client can get their 3 mobility drills done even on their worst day, that's huge. That's huge. And then they're able to do that when their day doesn't go as planned. It's not the day they were hoping for, but they still kind of find that 10-minute window and they're able to structure it into their day, and fantastic. I think that's a huge win, and it usually leads to more consistency over time.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky answer, right? It's based on the person, it's a conversation. It's getting that person to be an advocate for themselves, to tell you what they think they can do, almost like they're arguing, like, I will do this.
Mm-hmm.
I will do that 3 days a week. And I think that's important to have those conversations with yourself, if not a coach.
I also imagine that there's more adherence when someone has gone through that process and really thought about what they can do, and as opposed to just it coming from someone else. Like, do this
Right.
X number of times, regardless of your schedule and your how you feel about it.
Totally. Yeah. And if I just throw a number out there and then, here's what typically would happen. Okay, 5 days a week, you can do it, right? Send them home.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're not going to hit 5.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard. It's hard to hit 5 days a week of anything. My gosh. Especially like thinking about my lifestyle now compared to when I was hitting 5 days a week. Back when I was hitting 5 days a week of fitness, something fitness related. Oh my gosh, I had no responsibilities. It's just like I was just training. I was planning my meals.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't have like any significant responsibilities outside of that. And now, to get 5 days a week of whatever it's going to be. For me, it's fitness, it's self-care. It's not just gym stuff,
Yeah.
right? That those days are kind of gone for me. It's like there's a lot of other things I'm interested in too. I'm considering that in the 5 days, So it's hard to get that level of consistency.
Yeah.
So
Do you think that lifestyle change that you just described for yourself, do you think that that's made you a better coach?
yeah, I think so. I think so. I had a very interesting period where there was really, thinking back on it, there's really a lot of change in my mindset. Remember, I'm coming from a wrestling background, total brainwash. You brainwash yourself into thinking you can do anything you want, whenever you want, regardless of what you're feeling, and you can turn off the feelings if you need to. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just the mentality. And when I was coaching wrestling, that was the mentality we used. I actually brought this up not long ago talking to Alicia because we were talking about snow days because our daughter had a snow delay from school. And when we had snow days, when I was coaching high school wrestling, my assistant coach and I at the time, we were holding practice at a different location when practices had been canceled. We got in trouble for that. That's not good advice. Don't follow that advice if you're a new coach. The school systems don't like that. So basically they're saying, okay, school's canceled, practice is canceled. And we're like, yeah, right. Like, you don't cancel wrestling practice.
Yeah.
Especially in the middle of the winter when kids are, they need to stay in shape. They need to manage weight. There's all these things, all these factors. So we ended up kind of getting in trouble for that. And we ended up with this optional thing where basically our varsity showed up and some didn't. And that was just a decision their family made for them. But I'm coming from that, So I've had to learn over the years what is actually important, and where can we kind of dial back that intensity. And there's a time and a place for it, but I've learned a lot, and kind of matured through that kind of high intensity. I guess it's a no pain, no gain type of mentality to where I've arrived now, which is, we got to train hard, but we got to be smart about it. Just make better decisions, incorporate self care into what we're doing, because we're going to be breaking our bodies down, with certain types of training. And we got to do the opposite. We have to counter that by, caring for ourselves using these different tools and ideas that we can pull out of the toolbox, which, man, I didn't have that back in my athletic career.
You talked about like high payoff drills, getting your 10 minutes of high payoff drills in
Yep.
3 times a week, for example. For the neuro enthusiast,
Yeah.
for the person that really wants to take that to the next level, do you ever see people setting goals around something like visual drill competency
Yeah.
and setting like a neuro specific goal around that? That's not just about like my high payoff this, but it's about like getting your visual system or your vestibular system or something along those lines,
Yeah.
like to a higher level of performance.
Yeah, totally. So there are standards we can come up with certain vision exercises. So, for example, not long ago, just a couple weeks back, actually, in the neuro dojo, I was teaching visual saccades, which are essentially fast eye movements back and forth between two targets. And we brought out these sheets of paper that you can put on the wall. They're vertical columns, and you can place them on the wall and put them in different locations and stuff. And the idea is you're moving your eyes back and forth from one chart to the other chart, and you're reading the letter that you see,
Mm-hmm.
starting at the top, reading down. And what that ends up being is a bunch of visual saccades. And we have different standards for that. So depending on the distance that you have the charts away from one another, it could be like roughly 3 feet. You might get in front of that chart and just time yourself to see, like, in 1 minute, how many saccades can you get. And you'll see lots of different scores, and even your performance kind of break down at times, maybe losing your place on the chart,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. And so we can kind of get baselines for ourselves within like a minute or so of saccades. And then we can use that baseline to help us set a goal.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone who has athletic goals around, well, any kind of athletic goal, making your eyes faster at what they do, and also including the speed of processing,
Mm-hmm.
is huge for all athletics. So, yes, if you are getting into like vision training for more sport performance, it actually is good to get some of those standards. Time yourself through one of our coordination charts, see how quickly you can move through it. How quickly can you move through the saccade charts? How quickly can you do near far jumps? How many
Mm-hmm.
near far jumps can you do in a minute? Making sure that your targets come into clear focus. Those are really good things to do,
Mm-hmm.
and they give you some feedback, right? And then a big one there too is like visual acuity.
Mm-hmm.
So not everybody will have this goal, but visual acuity, how clearly you're able to see something. But it's kind of more than that. It's also about processing at the brain level. So the clarity that you have with your vision exercises is very important, and it's a good marker to look at long term. So those things come to mind. There's other things you could do, like our breathing assessments. Great thing to keep track of, easy to keep track of. Functional inhale assessments, functional exhale assessments, Bolt scores. These are all things that have more relationship to like CO2 tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
Super easy to test and track. And that's fun to kind of see that trend over time. So those things come to mind right away.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where could someone get more information about these standards and these kind of drills?
So we may have covered a little bit of that in our episode about, it might have been like sports performance in the visual
I think it
system.
was reaction time.
Yeah.
How to improve your reaction time.
I think we did cover a little bit of that in there. What I would say about standards for vision exercises is before you kind of try to figure out what a standard might be, just test yourself and find out where you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the ultimate, getting that baseline. I do have some standards for like our coordination charts where I'll tell our students like roughly 70 times through the chart is going to be where a lot of people fall. You don't want to be less than that. 70 is not great, but it's solid. And then we go from there. Visual saccades, very similar. When people start getting up to like 120 visual saccades in a minute or so, when the charts are 3 feet apart or further, that's pretty impressive. I've seen people go higher than that, up to like 140. It's really impressive. So I'm not sure like if you could track down specific standards that like are universal.
Sure.
But we do talk about some of those standards in our courses and just kind of give people an idea of where we would want them to fall.
Yeah.
But really the whole thing is test yourself. Where are you? How many times in a minute? And now let's beat that. And you can see that over time with practice.
And generally with practice, you see people are improving just by doing it.
Big time.
Yeah.
That's cool. Big time. Now it's hard to get someone to practice vision exercises, right? It's just hard. People have to have a real, good interest in it. It is not hard to get people to practice vision exercises when it helps them with a pain issue.
Right. If it's a high payoff drill.
Yeah. That's not that hard. And we're usually not really asking that much of them. We might be using 10 reps of a vision exercise to help them decrease pain. Usually can see pretty good compliance with that type of thing. But as soon as we start going into more, okay, let's get your eyes to function better, it's different because you have to do a lot more work.
Yeah.
And it actually is not easy and sometimes can be incredibly fatiguing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's harder to get people to do that style of vision work. But if you're an athlete and you really care and you get educated on the importance of that, you're probably willing to do it.
Do you have any other thoughts on setting goals in an applied neurology context?
Not really, except, as you're choosing your goals, don't choose a goal because you think it's the right goal. Choose a goal based on your desires and like what is your why for the goal. I think that's important. I think a lot of times people kind of get sucked into the goal setting thing, especially around the new year.
Yeah.
And they sort of come up with the wrong goal accidentally. There's layers, right? There's layers to goal setting, and kind of peeling those layers and really finding what your actual why is at a deeper level, I think will help you decide what your goals should be. For me, I think even goals on I want to be able to do this many reps or lift this amount of weight, like those things are fairly superficial for me. And it would be very hard for me to stay consistent if I said to myself, okay, I want to deadlift 400 pounds because deadlifting 400 pounds is cool and it means I'm strong. And it means I got stronger. That's very superficial versus I want to be able to deadlift more so that as my daughter grows bigger, I'm never compromised in any way with lower back strength when I want to pick her up.
Yeah.
Because she wants me to be able to do gymnastics with her and I better be able to do it. Right. And so all of a sudden, a goal that was superficial now becomes deeper with more meaning.
Mm-hmm.
I think finding the meaning behind those things is super important because, like I said, especially with exercise, remember everything we do at a gym is so just organized and controlled. Let's go deeper with our goal setting. Let's figure out our why, and if you can do that, I think it's going to really help you with your consistency, and really help you understand why, in fact, you are training. You are practicing fitness.
Yeah, that's great. I'm definitely going to be thinking about that as I consider my goals for the new year. So I appreciate that.
Nice. Are you a goal setter for the new year?
I'm it's 50-50.
Yeah.
It's 50-50. I do kind of feel like I'm like ready to get back into some strength training
Yeah.
right now. So I'm going to be thinking about how I want that to look.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like you, I've been kind of a freestyler, and that's been working for me until kind of recently it hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that's because I've been running a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
that's taken up my time. But I'm kind of like itchy to kind of get back to that. So
Yeah. I cycle in and out myself, you know.
yeah.
We've talked about it before, kind of focusing on following more of a program-based,
Mm-hmm.
you know, routine versus just kind of exploring. I think the cycle is the ultimate expression of a healthy relationship with fitness.
Hmm.
If you're staying relatively consistent with what you're doing, but you're cycling in and out of these different phases of how you are, you know, approaching
Yeah.
fitness and health, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely feels more intentional than when, you know, I was first starting and it was like, this is the program and you do the program, and
Right.
it feels more intrinsically guided, right?
Yep.
And that's cool.
Nice. Well, you'll have to update us on your running progress as you keep going. It's going to get cold. It is cold.
I just did a 5K yesterday morning.
Oh.
In 30-degree snowy weather.
Yep.
Light snow, but it was definitely hard to get up in the morning and go out there while it was still dark and like be like, man, is this dumb? Like, am I being an idiot right now?
Yeah.
But it wasn't so bad, you know.
That's cool.
So bad. So
sometimes situations like that, in the intensity of the added elements, if you will, actually fire me up to do stuff.
Yep. I thought I'm terrible at waking up in the morning. And so when I had to get up like super early for me, right, like 6 or something, and leave the house while it was still dark to go run in the cold, like I kind of thought, like, I have a hard time getting up and getting down to the basement to work on a podcast, you know. It's like
Yep.
So, but yeah, no, it's exactly what you said. Like, it was kind of invigorating, kind of you know,
why am I doing this?
Yeah, but these are experiences in life that, like, you know, this is why you do it almost. It's because it's so different and
Totally.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
All right, there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode on goal setting. I hope it was thought-provoking. Good time to remind you guys that, you know, as we get into the winter holiday season, we are now starting to approach enrollment time for our neuro courses. So there's no panic yet. You know, there's lots to come. Obviously, more content for you guys. Probably going to be putting together some free opportunities for people to get more educated, to help them understand what in fact we're doing on the neuro side of things with our courses. But just kind of putting that reminder out there that as we, you know, fast approach February, we will have an enrollment period coming, so you can start to think about our neuro courses and get stoked for that. Thank you guys all for listening to the podcast. Really appreciate it, and we'll be back soon.